are there still contradictions in the Bible now?
I've seen lots of TikToks claiming that there are. And so I don't know, I necessarily know how to refute all of these things, but I hear about specifically, well, Jesus was, Bethlehem, Nazareth, what's this census? The census doesn't exist, and stuff like that I hear often. I hear a lot about the Old Testament with the numbers. Well, there was like 2 million leaving Egypt,
Yeah.
that's impossible. And that's a contradiction from the numbers that we see in another passage of Scripture.
Yeah, and it's sometimes when people ask me that about contradictions, I say, yeah, which one? And I'll ask them to look it up. And most people don't have any clue. They just heard about it or thought they heard someone who heard about it or whatever. So I think they fall into two classes. One would be like the 2 million people were coming out of Egypt or whatever. In terms of number, we know in the ancient Near East, numbers were not exactly like, okay, there's a scientific, this is the number of people, like when it talks about slaying people in battle. They give inflated or hyperbolic type numbers. And so there's that one class where they're making a statement. So for example, when Zacchaeus, he meets Jesus, has him to his house, and he changes, he transforms. He's like, oh, from now on, I'm going to pay back everybody 4 times the amount of whatever they paid me. Everybody sitting in that crowd knew he didn't mean that literally. It's impossible to pay back everybody 4 times that you've cheated them out. So it's basically his statement of like, I have thoroughly changed and I will try to help you out as much as I can. Nobody lined up expecting 4 times the amount. And so in the ancient Near East, there is this kind of sense of, okay, you're making a statement with your numbers. So I would say there's a class of discrepancies, in the Bible that fall into that category. And then there are others that have to do with perspective. One gospel talks about how Judas went out to hang himself. And in another gospel, it talks about how he fell on some rocks and his insides burst out. And when you look into that, actually what that's describing is like if somebody hangs themselves and they die, all of the fluid kind of goes down to their belly. Over time, either the thing snaps or, they kind of fall out of it. And that's like a description of his insides being burst out over a bunch of rocks.
So it's like 2 ways to describe the same